I'm here at the Kissinger Institute of the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, talking to Ambassador Stapleton Roy to get his insight on China-U.S. relations at a time of leadership change in both countries. Born in Nanjing, Jiangsu province in 1935 to American missionary parents, Ambassador Roy spent his childhood and teenage years in China. He worked at the U.S. Liaison Office in Beijing and then later the U.S. Embassy in the 1970s and early 1980s. He became the U.S. Ambassador to China from 1991 to 1995.
First of all, I think it's very important that China now has a regular process for changing its leaders. Because in our experience, and I think in the experience of many other countries, in order to adjust policies, it's much easier if you are changing leaders at the same time. Because leaders have a tendency to become committed to one approach. And if the approach is not working as well as it should, new leaders have the chance to change that situation, hopefully for the better. So I think that both countries have a chance now to take another look at our bilateral relationship, and if we're not satisfied with the direction in which it's moving, we can make adjustments. Should we be satisfied? The answer is the relations are much better than they were when China and the United States were enemies. And I still recall those days. But at the moment, many people are concerned by the growing strategic mistrust between China and the United States. I really think that in a strategic sense, this is the #1 problem that both China and the United States face. Because it will be enormously damaging to both countries if we're not able to halt this drift toward greater competition and competitiveness in the bilateral relationship. Is it possible? The answer is yes. I think it is. And I've paid attention to the fact that Mr. Xi Jinping has been calling for a new type of relationship between major powers in the 21st century. And senior American officials, such as former Secretary of State Clinton, have used the same language, talking about trying to halt this problem of rising powers and established powers. And the way to do that is to try to stabilize competition and cooperation. Some people say now that competition is dominating the relationship. I think that's a false way of looking at it. It doesn't take into account the enormous economic relations between the United States and China. Trade, after all, is a form of cooperation, not of competition. You have goods, I give you money, it's a cooperative exchange. And we have enormous trading relations with China of the sort that we never had with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So I think the cooperative aspects of the U.S.-China relationship are still very strong and can be made stronger if leaders can find the right way to go about that. You don't have the circumstances for a Cold War. First of all, our economies are intertwined in a way that was not true at all of any of the countries with whom we had a containment policy during the Cold War. But secondly, China's rise has been, as I said in my remarks in Honolulu, China's rise has been beneficial to the countries around it. So when China behaves responsibly, all of China's neighbors want to cooperate with China. It's only when, in their view, China is behaving too assertively that they then look to the United States to help them balance China. So they do not want to choose between China and the United States. Cold War requires countries to choose. And we have no support for a choice between China and the United States in East Asia. And so therefore it seems to me a new Cold War is not a realistic possibility. I think there's enormous possibility for us to cooperate together in ways that can enhance mutual trust. We can do it in the Korean Peninsula, where both of us are concerned about a rise in tensions there and would like to lower tensions. We can do it in trying to manage some of these territorial disputes around China. The United States is not happy with the rise of tensions because that creates difficulties for us. We do not want to be pulled into a conflict with China by our friends and allies. And so we have the difficult problem of trying to reassure them that we're a reliable friend, but at the same time, trying to restrain their behavior so that they don't become more provocative toward China. Well, I think that this is the type of behavior which, if read properly by China, can contribute to mutual trust. I think what the United States would like would be for Xi Jinping to establish a relationship with President Obama and with our other senior leaders on both sides that would enable us to expand cooperation and better manage the areas where we have competitive interests. Xi Jinping has the advantage that previous Chinese leaders have not had, which is he has been to the United States several times before he became China's top leader. So therefore, he's already familiar with how Americans behave. He has better background, if you will. Incidentally, this also applies to Taiwan. Because of his many years in Fujian, I think he probably has a better understanding of the psychology of the people on Taiwan than many other Chinese leaders have. So I think that we are optimistic that he has the potential to look for a wise way to handle problem areas and to be energetic in trying to expand areas of cooperation.